Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Chris Lopez here. We'll get started in about 30 seconds. But I know we got quite a few people on the show, or on the webinar, I should say. Just if someone out there could give me a thumbs up or an audio check, make sure you're going to hear me and Joe. That
Yep,
would.
guys, this is Joe Massey. If you can make sure you can hear me too. If you can maybe put a note in the box that says you can hear Joe, you can hear Chris.
We've definitely had webinars where people can hear. Cool. All right. Thank you, Edith. All right, guys. So today we're going to be talking about the BRRRR strategy, which is buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. So my name is Chris Lopez. I'm a real estate agent here at Your Castle Real Estate, and I focus on helping investors buy rental properties and also house hacks. My co-host today is Joe Massey with Castle and Cook, who takes care of all your financing needs. Joe, how's it going?
Fantastic, Chris. Thanks for having me, man. Always appreciate being a part of this. And I think we have a pretty decent number of folks on the I keep wanting to call it a show, on the webinar today. My name is Joe Massey, Castle and Cook Mortgage. I've been a part of the Your Castle First Alliance team for more than 9 years now, and have been doing work and webinars with Chris for, it's been 2 years, 3 years now we've been doing these together, I think.
I think you're coming on lucky number 3 that you've been doing this with me, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're exactly right. So let's see. You said we did get a thumbs up that everyone can hear us. Did we get a thumbs up that you guys can see my screen as well? If we can just get one person to say yes, I just want to be 100% sure before we kick everything off.
Yep, we're good.
All right, great. So what we're going to talk about today is the BRRRR strategy. And so the first thing I always like to talk about is, why are you here today? Why did you take an hour out of your day to come and join Chris and I on this webinar? Maybe you want to learn how to invest in real estate, or maybe you already have some real estate investments. Maybe you want to diversify some other assets into real estate. I hear this a lot. You want to learn how to buy cash flowing rental properties, or maybe you want to put as little cash down as possible. Or perhaps you have the skills to renovate a property and you want to use those skills to increase your net worth. All of these reasons might be reasons that you're here. Maybe it's more than one, maybe it's just one. And we're going to talk about a lot of this today. And we're going to start with, what are the most common ways to purchase investment properties? And if you watch late night TV, Carlton Sheets, he's always out there selling books and tapes and CDs. I guess now it's MP3s, but that's how old I am. Been buying books and tapes and CDs from late night TV. But they'll talk about 99 ways to buy real estate, 118 ways to acquire rental properties. It really boils down to 97% of transactions are going to occur one of 3 ways. Number one, purchase a property with cash. Pretty simple, pretty easy to understand. You've got $100,000. You buy a property for $100,000. They give you the keys and you walk out with the title. Big benefits, you get great cash flow. No qualifying, super easy process. You don't have to mess with any pesky lenders. You don't have to answer where you work, where you live, anything like that. But there's some downsides. You need a lot of cash. All right. If you pay cash for property, you have to have all of the money, and then it ties up your cash for a really long time. So it ties up everything for a long period of time. Number 2, purchase a property with new permanent financing. This is the way most of us bought our first home, or maybe most of us, the way we bought our trade-up home or second home. You save up 5, 10, 20, 30% down. You put your down payment down. You get a loan for the remaining balance, and you move on and make payments for the next 30 years. This works for investment properties as well, and it's a pretty straightforward process. Big benefit here is it allows you to put less money down, right? In scenario number 1, I've got to put down 100%. Scenario number 2, maybe I put down 5, 10, 20, 30% down, whatever the numbers might be. However, you have to qualify for a new loan, and then you're not going to have as strong of cash flow. All right. If up here, if I'm renting this property for $1,000 a month, all $1,000 go to my cash flow. In this scenario, if I'm renting the property for $1,000 a month, I first have to pay the mortgage. Maybe it's $600 a month. Then the other $400 is going to be my cash flow. So you got to factor that in. You're now going to have a mortgage payment if you use scenario number 2. In scenario number 3, purchase the property with a hard money or any sort of short-term financing, and then refinance that into permanent financing. Big benefit here, very low down payment. You can purchase with as little as 0 money down with a hard money loan, and you're going to gain a lot of equity in this property once you fix it up and renovate it. And then number 2, you have fewer deals available. All right. There's not as many transactions out there. You're going to have 2 closings. You need more skill, and we're going to talk about that, and it's more time consuming. So this is the type of transaction that can be really, really beneficial, but because it's beneficial, there's a lot of competition and there's fewer of these out there. So Chris, you look at a lot of transactions. Out on the MLS, do you see a lot of opportunity to pay cash for properties?
Oh, tons.
Do you see opportunity to get a new loan and purchase property with regular permanent financing?
Yep, there's lots of good options out there.
How about number 3? Are there a lot of these out there?
There's a lot less of these properties out there.
Yeah, they are still out there.
Yep.
In fact, I've got one of my clients that's just closed on one of these just recently, just acquired the property, and he's doing the renovations right now. But there are fewer of these available right now. But that doesn't mean it's not important to know how to do this. And I would say 97% of transactions fall under one of these 3 ways. So again, late night TV, hey, send me $499 and I'll teach you 108 ways to buy real estate, 99 ways to acquire property, whatever it might be. This is it, guys. These are the 3 ways to acquire properties. The other 3% might be like a subject to or wholesale. 97% of your transactions are going to fall under one of these 3 right here. So I would encourage you to be very educated on these 3 scenarios. But what we're going to focus on today is number 3, purchasing with a hard money loan, some sort of short-term financing and refinancing it into permanent financing. So what does that look like? What's the process? Number 1, you're going to buy it. Then you're going to rehab it. Then you're going to rent it out. Then you're going to refinance it. And if you enjoyed that and you made money, you're going to repeat. Also known as BRRRR. That is the BRRRR strategy. Now, I've been doing this since before we had this cool term called the BRRRR strategy. We used to just call this buy with hard money and fix it up. We've been doing this for 15 years, might be the first time I did one of these. And it's a great strategy if you know what you're doing. But you're going to need some very specific items in order to make this work. Number 1, you're going to need a property. This property is going to need to be below market value so that you can add some value to it. Then you're going to need to renovate it. Are you going to do the work yourself or are you going to hire a contractor? And then you're going to need a hard money lender. And this step, guys, is absolutely critical. And I hear this all the time. I don't want to do a hard money loan because the interest rate's too high. The cost is too much. Okay. Well, if you want to do this, you need to understand that hard money is a tool in the tool belt, and this leverage is going to help you make more money. And I'll walk you through some scenarios. I have a lot of people that spend a lot of time trying to find ways to avoid hard money, and ultimately what they end up doing is costing themselves more money. Now, that's okay with me. It's okay with the hard money lender, but I would encourage you, follow the process we've laid out, understand the benefits of a hard money loan, understand what they are doing for you and the benefit that you're getting out of it and how that leverage works. And this will help you make more money.
Hey, Joe, so we have a question here from Larry.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe, what about using a guidance line of credit instead of a hard money loan for this option?
Sure. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. You're looking for a guidance line in order to avoid the costs of interest rate and hard money closing costs. That's certainly an option. Will likely cost you more money. And that's what we're going to talk about. I'll show you that option where you can use a HELOC, which is the same as a guidance line. You can certainly do that if you want to, but it would most likely end up costing you more money. But you certainly can do that. And so that's an important point. This is something that you can customize. Everyone can do this on their own routes, their own preferences. We're going to lay out the ways that we've seen other folks do it, but absolutely, if you've got other facilities that you want to use to fund the renovations and fund the costs, you certainly can do that. So the next step here is you're going to need a permanent lender. This is a critical piece. The wrong permanent lender can cost you thousands. This is something, and we'll talk about this. You're going to want to make sure that this person knows what they're doing and they know how to pay off this hard money loan. And then for the repeat phase, you're going to need a property manager. Or are you going to manage the property yourself? In which case, you are the property manager. So let's walk through the process. Number 1, locate the property. All right. Then you're going to get it under contract, prepare your repair budget, analyze it, get your inspection, your bids, your scope of work. Then you're going to close on your hard money acquisition loan. Then you're going, that's your buy phase. Then you're going to repair the property. That's your rehab phase. Then you're going to get a tenant. That's your rent phase. Then you're going to refinance the hard money loan. That's your refi phase. And then if you liked it, hire a management company or manage the property yourself. That is your repeat phase. So BRRRR. Okay. That's the process, guys. These are the number of steps. Chris, let me ask you, is this more complicated and more steps than simply paying cash?
Oh, it's way more complex. It's less inventory out there, harder to find the property. You have a lot more moving parts out there. So it just takes more time, more things can go wrong, and it takes a higher level of skill.
That's exactly right. You've got to be a really skilled investor if you're doing this. And I've had investors do this for their very first property. I've had investors do this for their 10th property. But you just want to make sure you understand what you're doing. So let's talk about the buy phase. Number one, you're going to locate the property. It needs to be in a good rental area. Chris, can you give me some examples of good rental areas?
So those would be areas where they have a good rent to price ratio. So if you go out there and think of like a really high end neighborhood, like a Rhino or a Wash Park, they're great areas to live in, but they have a very high price point, but their rents do not jump up nearly as high as like the prices do. So good rental areas are places like Southwest Denver, Aurora, parts of the west side of town, Westminster Thornton, where they have a lower price point, but still strong rents.
Yep, that's exactly right. My favorite example to use is Wash Park. Let's say I can buy a $800,000 3-bedroom home. It's going to rent for probably $3,000, $3,500 a month. Maybe if I'm lucky, $4,000 a month. Or I can buy a 3-bedroom home in Southwest Denver, and I could pay $325, and that same 3-bedroom rent is going to be $2,200 a month. All right. I don't have to pay as much for a property in a good rental area compared to what the rents are going to be. So you want to make sure you're buying in a good rental area where those rents are going to cover that final mortgage payment. And then I'm looking for something that's underpriced. Is it a divorce property? Is it a foreclosure? Is it a wholesale deal? Is it an estate sale? What's going on with this property that I can get it underpriced? And then how can I add value? Am I going to improve the property, add square footage, pop the top, finish the basement, do a quick carpet and paint? What am I going to do to add value to the property? And then I'm going to get it under contract and analyze it in depth. So I'm going to start with my repair budget. How much money am I planning to spend on the property? And then I'm going to decide if I want to get an inspection. Do I get a professional inspection, or do I have my contractor inspect it? Or maybe I do both, or maybe I am a contractor, so I don't need that. So I'll do neither. And then I'm going to get contractor bids. Should I get one bid? Should I get 2, 3, 5? Who knows? It's totally up to you. But then you're going to write up your scope of work, and you're going to work with the contractor you've selected to write up that scope of work, that estimated renovation budget. Your hard money lender and your hard money appraiser are going to need this. They're going to want to know how much you're planning to spend on the property, what you're doing to the property, and what your scope of work is. That's how they're going to determine that final value of the property. And looking at the buy phase, Chris, you've done some of these with me. Do you think that this property looks like a good property that you would want to buy and renovate and add value to?
No, this would probably be a property I just want to buy with financing and do nothing but just let it stay there and collect my rent checks.
Yep. Most likely this property is in good shape. We haven't been inside this property, but looking at the manicured shrubs, the well-kept yard, most likely the inside is well-kept as well. So unless I'm popping the top or adding square footage somehow with an extension on the back, this property, probably not a great idea to try and renovate this property. How about this one? So this is my house. This is where I live. No, just kidding. But this property, Chris, do you see any opportunities to add value here?
Oh, yeah. There's some potential there to at least put some a coat of paint on the outside there.
Yeah. We've got broken windows. We've got a crumbling foundation. We've got busted doors. I can probably get this significantly under value, right? I could probably get this well below the market value for the area. Then I'm going to put some money into this property, get it fixed up, and then it's going to be worth a higher dollar amount, just as if I were doing a fix and flip. But instead of flipping and selling the property, I'm going to keep it and refinance it. So when you're looking at properties on the MLS, if you see something that looks like this, probably not the right strategy for this. You see something that looks like this, might be a good opportunity to think about buying it with a hard money loan.
And Joe, I want to, give some context here, because we do see some properties like this on the MLS, and it's not uncommon. Hey, they will go live on Friday, and the agent will say, hey, offers are due by Sunday or Monday. And at least pre-COVID, when we actually go out there and look at houses and open houses, there would literally be like lines out the door, elbow to elbow, to get in these properties. And it's not uncommon to have 30 or 40 offers on these properties. So just because you see one out there, just because there's so few people out there, and the Denver market's such a great market, you and every other investor and their brother is out there looking at the property as well. So you have to know your numbers and be able to act really, really fast, because it's not uncommon for things to get bid up, either because someone has a different plan from you, or it might be a new investor that's way overpaying and you can't compete with stupid money chasing a property.
That's right.
Or
That's
you should.
exactly right.
And Joe, we have a question here from Mike from a few minutes ago. He said, Joe, do BRRRRs work the same with duplexes?
Sure. Yep. In fact, I think, let me look. I think we may have a duplex example in here.
But basically, the concept works exactly the same. There might be a few differences in finances, but this works for 1 unit, 2 units, 20 units. The concept all works the same.
Yep, it does actually. Chris, you're exactly right. I just scrolled forward. I actually have older examples in here. I thought this was a presentation that had the new examples in it, but it's not. But I do have one of my most recent ones that I closed in January. In December, about 6 months ago, was a 4-unit. So yes, this absolutely works with duplex properties, absolutely works with 3-unit, 4-unit properties, works with condos and townhomes as well. Difficult to get the appraisal spread there. But yeah, any sort of residential property, condo, townhome, single family, up to 4 units. So really good question. All right. Next step, let's get our hard money acquisition loan. Did that update? There we go. Can you see that now? Does that show on your side?
Yeah, get hard money acquisition loan.
Okay, great. Sorry, when I clicked to look at the examples, it took me off of there. So the first thing you're going to want to know is, what is your ARV? So ARV is your after repaired value. All right, this is going to be determined by your hard money lender's appraiser. They're going to want your scope of work. They're going to want your budget. They're going to go out and look and come up with, in the future, after you've done all this work, what is this property going to be worth? And they're going to come up with a dollar amount, and the hard money lender is going to lend you based on the LTV, the loan to value of that after repaired value. So a question you're going to want to ask your hard money lender: what LTC, which is loan to cost, what loan to cost and loan to value does the hard money lender go up to? So one of the popular hard money lenders in town that does a number of these, they'll lend up to 70% LTV, 70% of that ARV, not to exceed 100% loan to cost. So this is a true no money down transaction. If I have a property that the ARV is, let's just say $100,000 to make it easy, I can acquire the property for $50,000, $20,000 into renovations. That's $70,000 is the total cost. They'll lend me up to $70,000, 100% loan to cost, because that $70,000 is 70% of my $100,000 ARV. So I can borrow 70% of the ARV, not to exceed all the costs associated with the transaction. There's another hard money lender in town. They charge they'll lend 65% of the LTV. 65 LTV of 90% of the ARV. So think about that for a minute. They take the ARV and they reduce it by 10%. And then they say, hey, we're going to only lend you 65% of that 90%. Now, if you've got a calculator at home, which I'm sure most of you do, because some people might be watching this on a phone or have their phone next to them, plug this into your calculator. 0.9 times 0.65, that is 58.5%, meaning that they're only lending to 58.5 of the ARV. Okay. Now, these guys don't have any restriction on loan to cost. They're just simply restricting on what they'll lend on the ARV. So potentially no money down if you have a strong enough transaction, but you're going to have a property that has a lot of equity in it in order to use that lender with no money down. There's another lender in town. They'll do 75% of the ARV up to 90% loan to cost. So they do require 10% down. This is a great hard money lender. We've done a lot of transactions with them. And what they're doing is taking that 10% down, okay? Because you're putting a little more money down, they're going to lend you a little bit higher dollar amount. And then another hard money lender that we work with, 90% LTV based on the purchase price. So straight out of the gate, you put 10% down and then you finance all that renovation out of your pocket. Now, how do the costs compare? Your costs for a hard money loan are going to range from 0 to 4% upfront. And your rates are going to be between 9 and 15% on an annual basis. And the good rule of thumb, generally the higher the LTV and the higher the loan to cost, the higher the cost of the loan. So these ones up here where we're borrowing more money, putting less money down, you're going to be higher in points and higher in interest rate. I believe this top scenario here, I believe they charge 4 points and a rate of 12.9%. This one down here, they charge 2 points and a flat rate of 10%. All right. So what you see, the more of your own money you're putting in, the less you have to pay for your points and interest. And that's where a lot of people will say, well, this is great. I want to just totally avoid the hard money costs and I'll just put in my own cash or I'll use a HELOC. Okay, that's fantastic. Those costs are going to be a lot less, but I'm going to show you, you're going to have to hold on to that property for a while and it's going to actually end up costing you more. So you want to understand what's your hard money lender doing for you? Why is it valuable? And is this a tool that you want to use? And it's not a tool you want to use on every transaction. Sometimes people look at a deal, we go through it, I'm like, you should just pay cash or you should just get a loan. All right. This doesn't work in every scenario. Chris, you see this sometimes where somebody starts with this scenario and then they change and just pay cash or just get regular permanent financing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and that's pretty typical with any properties. You go in there with one strategy, then as you get into your due diligence phase and you run it by your team members to get their inputs, I'm like, wow, hey, it's a better option to take it down this route or do a different strategy.
Yep, so absolutely. So now let's look at the renovation page. Number one, you're going to want to get started immediately. Hard money costs are due every single month, and you do not want to let the carrying costs eat up your profits. All right. So the most important thing I'm going to tell you about the renovation phase, guys, this is going to be different on every single property. Some properties are going to need new foundation. Some properties are going to need paint and carpet. Some properties are going to need a new roof. That is not what we're going to get into today. What we're going to get into is managing the process and knowing what you need to do every single day to keep this moving forward. So you want to think about your hard money loan costs. Let's say I have a $300,000 hard money loan times 15%. That costs me $123 per day. So if my contractor doesn't show up one day and says, hey, I got to go work at another job, can't come by your house today to do any work, that costs you $123. And then the next day he says, hey, you know what? My son is sick from school, so I can't come in and can't work on your property. That costs you another $123. So something you want to do is manage the contractor to make sure they stay on track. Or the bigger risk that I see, if you're doing the work yourself, you need to manage yourself to stay on track. I see this happen a lot where somebody's like, oh, I am a contractor. I'm going to do the work myself. I can do it for half price. Fantastic. I don't have any disputes with that. I think that sounds great. But then they plan to do the work in 3 weeks, and all of a sudden it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and these carrying costs of $123 per day, those are adding up and costing them a lot of their profits. Now, you're going to work with your hard money lender for your draws. So your hard money lender is generally going to be lending you and escrowing money for the renovation. And they're going to have that cash available for you. Once you get to certain points in your project, they're going to advance those funds for you to pay your contractor or pay yourself for the materials that you bought. And really important, don't forget your miscellaneous carrying cost, insurance, utilities, HOA dues. All of these things are costs that you've got to pay while this property is sitting vacant while you're doing the renovation. So Chris, what do you think about rehab? Do you manage, or do you recommend that people move through this as quickly as possible?
I recommend you move through as quickly as possible by hiring a professional to do it. Because as you said, there's a couple things I'm really good at, which is putting deals together and help people buy properties. When it comes to doing projects at a house, whether it's a rental property or my property, I actually enjoy doing projects. Here's a problem, though. It's not the highest and best use of time, and it usually takes me way longer than a professional, and it usually is less quality than professional. So even though I might be saving, I might be writing a $2,000 check for someone to come out and do the work, the opportunity cost of my time and the extra carrying cost usually far outweigh that $2,000 check I would have to write. So I believe you do it as quickly as possible, hire it out, or if you don't, damn well make sure you hold yourself accountable.
Yep, that's right. Because if you take the day off, it's a hot day out at 92 degrees today. I'm going to take the day off and take the kids to the water park. All right, no problem. It's costing you $123 because you're not working on that property today. So just keep that in mind. You've got to understand how much it costs you every single day when that project is not moving forward. All right, let's talk about renting. Number one, you want to have a good estimate of what the property is going to rent for. Ways you can get that: call other landlords in the area. Look at Craigslist listings. One of my favorites is Zillow and Rentometer. Go out there, plug in the property, number of bedrooms. It'll tell you how much the property should rent for. And then if you've got a tenant property manager, give them a call. See what they think. Hey, what do you think that it would cost to put a tenant into this place, and how much would you rent it for? And then maybe you decide you want to do it yourself. Okay, that's fine. Just need to make sure you have a good tenant screening service. All right, you need to make sure that you can pull credit, you can do a background check, you've got everything in place, ready to go. And if you decide to find the tenant yourself, fantastic. Make sure you've just got that plan in place and you've got it built into your time. Or maybe you want to work with an independent tenant placement service, or maybe you want to work with a property manager. Now, personally, I work with a property manager so that once my property is completed, I give it to my property manager. They handle finding the tenant. They put them in there. They do the background check. I don't have to do anything other than pay the property manager's fee, and then they take care of everything else. Chris, how do you do it?
I use property managers. Again, goes back to what I said the previous slide. If I can outsource something to a professional who's been doing it for 10 or 15 or 20 years, and that's what they do 50 or 40 or 50 hours a week, that's why I want managing my properties. Where for me, managing properties and dealing with tenants, that is a B list or C list priority for me. It's an afterthought outside of stuff I do on a day-to-day basis. So I like hiring people.
I agree 100%. But again, it's not for everybody. Some folks like to manage properties yourself. That's cool. Just make sure you've got a plan in place for how you're going to rent that property out. Next is the refi phase. And this can be a complex one, guys. Number one, you need a lender that understands this strategy. This cannot be their first rodeo. If this is the first time they're doing this, you are letting them practice with a large investment for you. So you need to make sure that you have somebody that has done this before. Have they worked with your hard money lender before? If yes, great. If no, that's okay. But make sure they get on the phone and introduce themselves to the hard money lender. All right. At one point, I had never worked with any of the hard money lenders in town. Now I've worked with all of them. But at some point, I had to establish a relationship, make sure I knew what they needed, make sure they knew what I needed, and that we could work together in order to refinance this transaction. Does your lender have any seasoning requirements? This is critical. Many lenders are going to require that you own the property for a certain period of time before you can refinance it. Here at Castle & Cook Mortgage, if you're paying off an existing lien on the property, we do not require that you own the property for any period of time. I'll say that again because it's really important. Here at Castle & Cook Mortgage, if you are paying off an existing lien on the property, we do not require that you have owned the property for any minimum period of time. So you can get a hard money loan today, fix the property up tomorrow. We could refinance it the next day and pay off that hard money loan. There are no seasoning requirements to pay off that hard money loan. Now, many lenders require that you hold the property for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. One of my favorite banks in town, love these guys. I pick up a lot of transactions from them. They require 24 months before they will let you refinance the property. All right. So think about that for a minute. If you had to make your payments to your hard money lender for 24 months, is that going to eat into your costs?
Oh, my
Absolutely.
God. Yeah.
Right. Now, what if you want to take cash out of the property? Here at Castle & Cook Mortgage, if you want to take cash out, you have to hold the property for a minimum of 6 months, and then you can take cash out of the property. Again, many lenders require 12 months, 18, sometimes even 24 months. Do their underwriters understand the appraisal requirements? This is a different requirement from lender to lender. And do the appraisers understand their underwriting requirements? So what we're looking at is a property that was recently purchased under value. It's now been fixed up. It now has a higher value. Can the appraiser and can the underwriter work on that together? Again, here we've done a number of these. We've got it down to a science. It's not a big deal, but not every lender can do that. And then they're going to lend you, or we're going to lend you up to 75% of the appraised value. Now, not every lender is going to offer that. You're going to want to find out, what does that lender require? Do they go up to 75% LTV? Do they stop at 70? Maybe they stop at 65. Maybe they start at 65% LTV. And then once you go to having the property for 6 months, they'll lend up to 70%. All right. There's going to be a lot of variables on that. For us, we'll lend you up to 75% of the appraised value with no seasoning requirements since you're paying off an existing lien. That value is going to be determined by a new appraisal, and all of your closing costs can be included in that loan. So if you have a strong enough transaction, all of your closing costs can be included into the property and into the new mortgage. One of my favorite stories on this, I have a client who attended one of these classes a number of years ago, and he raised his hand and he said, Joe, I'm having trouble with my lender. When we got to this slide, he said, I've been working with a guy for 9 months trying to refinance my property. I said, 9 months? He said, yeah. I said, what's the issue? He goes, I don't know. He goes, could I have you take a look at it? And I said, absolutely. When we're done with the class, come see me. He came and saw me right after the class. What do you know? The lender he was working with had never done this before, and they had a 12-month seasoning requirement. And they just kept telling him, okay, we just need a little more time. We just need a little more time. Well, he would have had to wait 3 additional months paying 15% on his hard money loan before that lender could do that refinance for him. He sat down with me. I looked at it. We closed his transaction 2 weeks later. So you want to make sure that your permanent lender knows how to pay off your hard money loan and get you out of that transaction. If you're working with somebody and they don't seem to have all their ducks in a row, that's what we're here for. Give us a call. We know how to do these. All right. Last step, repeat. Chris and I spoke about this a minute ago. I love having a property manager. All right. After they get the tenant filled, I expect to pay them about 10% per month, and I don't do anything. There's zero active management. They deal with the tenant turnovers, evictions, issues, etc. HOA violations, they deal with it. I don't deal with any of that stuff. Or you could manage the property yourself. The big benefit here, it's free, right? So you make more money. Maybe, right? Maybe, because you've got to think about your time and the hassles. So maybe there's a little hassle. Maybe you make more money. Maybe there's a lot of hassle. Maybe you don't make more money. But ultimately, you're going to deal with all the tenant turnovers, evictions, issues, etc. And then save your profits each month and go out and do it again and again and again. So Chris, I want to pause for a moment. This is the whole process. We've gone through the process from I was going to say from A to Z, but from B to the final R, we've gone through all the steps. What questions are out there in the chat box? I can't view the box on my side.
So one question says, if we have a lien with a self-directed IRA of someone we know instead of hard money, would that qualify for a refinance without seasoning for the permanent finance piece?
That's correct. If we're paying off an existing lien and you're not taking any cash out of the property, yes, we can pay that off with no seasoning.
Another question here says, I've heard property managers generally run about 10% of the rent. Do you guys agree with that? Yes, we do.
I do. Yep.
So that's it for the questions now. I think the questions will start rolling in because this is the conceptual part, everyone out there. The next few slides, or next handful of slides, will go through 4 or 5 deals and actually go through a lot of numbers. So if you're multitasking, I definitely recommend that you focus here for the next half an hour because we will go through these numbers really quick and it's very easy to get lost.
Yep. So what we're going to look at next is a real transaction.
Oh, Joe, one more question. Sorry.
Sure.
If it's gift money and we put in a lien ourselves, would that be the same as hard money?
No. So gift money is a gift. That's not a lien. So if somebody's giving you that money, and you're paying cash for that property, that would not be a hard money loan.
Another question is, who determines the ARV?
The appraiser. Yeah. So your hard money appraiser is going to go out and appraise the property based on your scope of work and your budget and your renovation, and look at the market to determine what that ARV is. And that's what your hard money lender is going to lend based off of.
And then also when they go back to do the permanent refinancing, you do another appraisal, right?
That's correct. Yep. We're going to do an appraisal for what is that final value, because that ARV is a guesstimate. We're guessing what is this property going to be worth in 60 or 90 days once you've done this renovation. Once you do the renovation, now we're not guessing. Now we have a finished product and we go out and appraise that property to determine what is the true market value.
And Ken says, Joe, can you define a cash out refinance? Is that cash out more than the hard money loan against the property? What is it?
Yeah. So a cash out refinance is when you're receiving cash from the proceeds of the refinance. So if you have a $100,000 hard money loan and you want to take out a new loan for $150,000 and you're going to receive $50,000, that would be cash to you. So you would need to hold that property for a minimum of 6 months before you can take cash out of the property.
But just to clarify, if you've got that hard money loan and I go to Joe and he pays off Pine Financial because they have my hard money loan, but I have no cash received, that's not a cash out refinance. That's just a refinance because Joe's paying off another lender.
That's exactly right. So in that same scenario, if you have a $100,000 hard money loan and I give you a new loan for, let's call it $104,000, and I pay off that $100,000 loan and finance in $4,000 of closing costs, and you don't walk away with any cash, that's just a refinance, and there is no required seasoning or no holding period that you have to own that property.
So another question here, what about a delayed finance cash out? Isn't that different than a regular cash out refinance, which needs that 6-month seasoning period?
Yeah, delayed financing is if you pay cash for the property, then you can take your cash back out of the property in less than 6 months. But that's paying cash for the property. And your restriction is that you can only take out the amount of cash that you paid for the property.
Great. That's all the questions for one more question. Do you have any date and deadline suggestions for a buy contract considering the amount of appraisal due diligence required? So Edith, that's a really loaded question there, because you want to keep it as short as possible, and that's what a lot of times how these investors win these properties is they often go in there with a couple days due diligence period in there, and sometimes they're closing within 7 or 10 days. So you will not get an extended time to close on the property. I mean, you can ask for it, but it really hurts your offer.
Yeah, I think if it were me, I would write no more than a 7-day contract to purchase the property, and I'd make sure I was working with a hard money lender that could accommodate that time frame.
Yeah, it's speed and it's a higher risk and higher reward, and that's why this strategy is typically for more experienced investors that can move quickly, make quick, calculated decisions, and they have their team lined up to know what the scope of work is.
That's exactly right. All right. Any others in the question box?
No, we're good for now. So let's roll on.
Great. So let's look at a sample property. Now, this is a real transaction that I did the loan on a couple years ago now. I've got an updated one of these and some updated case studies, but we're going to look at this one because it's a really good real world example. So purchase price in this home was $225,000. Now, everybody out there is supposed to say, oh, but these don't exist anymore. That's true, except for all the ones that are out there. One of my clients right now just bought a property last week for $210,000 that he's putting money into, and he's going to have an ARV of about $350,000. So I want you guys to know, while this might seem like it's old, and this is an older property, these are still out there. So purchase price of $225,000. This property needed $30,000 of renovation. After all the repairs, this property was going to be worth $380,000. This property rents for $2,700 per month, taxes of $1,900, insurance of $1,100 a month. We factor in 5% for vacancy and $1,800 a year for annual repairs and maintenance. So those are your main expenses. Hard money costs. Initially, they selected the highest and most expensive hard money lender at 4 points with an interest rate of 15%. And their hard money loan payment is $3,325 per month. And the LTV is their hard money lender would lend them up to 70% of the ARV. And their hard money lender had a limit of 100% loan to cost. So I hope everybody got that, because this is going to be really important for this sample property. And I've saved these up here so you can see these items. So your $225,000 price, $30,000 renovation, $380,000 ARV, $2,700 a month in rent, $3,000 a year for taxes and insurance, $1,800 for vacancy, $1,800 repairs and maintenance, hard money loan payment of $3,300. The purchase price on the home, $225,000. Renovation, $30,000. Closing costs, $12,000. Chris, holy cow, why are the closing costs so expensive?
Well, you got a hard money loan there. You got to pay points.
Exactly right. It's a hard money loan. You paid 4 points right up front, plus processing, appraisal, title, inspection, etc. $12,000. But the hard money lender would lend up to.
Sorry. What is a point to find that?
Sure. A point is 1% of the loan amount. All right. So the total loan amount is 70% of this ARV. So 266 is the loan amount. 1 point is 1% of this, $2,660. So this loan had 4 points. So that's what? Just a little over $10,000. The remaining costs were things like title insurance, processing, appraisal, inspections, etc. Okay. So very good question. So $266,000. But if we add up here, the purchase price was $225, plus 30 is $255, plus 12 is $267,000. We got a loan for $266. So guess what? Walking out of First Alliance Title, it cost us $1,000 to buy this property and get the keys to it. Then we went in, or that's our buy phase. Almost forgot that piece. Then we went in and renovated the property. That's the rehab phase. It took 2 months to do the renovation. And after that renovation was completed, they called me to do their refinance. We paid off their existing loan for $266,000. Financed in their closing costs of $5,000. Their total new loan amount was $271,000. They needed to bring a whopping $0 to the closing in order to close on the refinance. So total cash in is $1,000 at closing, $0 to refinance. They made 3 monthly payments. Hard money payment is $33.25. They had 2 payments during the renovation period, and they had 1 payment while we went through the refinance process. So $33.25 times 3 months, they had $9,975 in carrying costs, plus $1,000 of miscellaneous carrying costs. During this 3-month period, they had to pay homeowners insurance, property taxes, HOA, utilities, the various costs associated with owning a property. Their total investment, $11,975. Then they went out and rented this property, $2,700. Monthly payment on this $271,000 is $1,645. Cash flow, $1,055. Gross cash flow, $12,660 per year, minus that $3,600 for vacancy, repairs, and maintenance gives you an annual net cash flow, $9,060 per year. That is the rent phase. The cash on cash return, they're getting a return of $9,000. They invested $11,000. That is a 75% return. Chris, do you get a 75% return in your 401k?
No. Move the decimal over 1 to the left. That's what I get.
Yeah, 1 to the left. So you got 7.5%. I think this year it's like negative 7.5%.
Well, not this year, but averages.
I'm teasing. 75% return. Not to mention, we have 25% equity in the property. We can depreciate the property for tax benefits. The value of the property is going to continue to appreciate, most likely, and we're getting a really, really good return with very little cash into this transaction. So, Chris, let me ask you, would you repeat? Would you do this again?
Absolutely.
Let's take a poll from everybody out there. Type yes in the chat box if you would buy this property again. What are you seeing, Chris? Anybody that would buy this?
Is coming in. No knows.
Yep, absolutely. So this is how this strategy works. Again, guys, a lot of folks are out there watching this, thinking about it. Man, this was great, but it just doesn't work right now. That's true, except for all the folks that I have that are currently doing it. So these transactions are out there. Yeah, they're harder to find, but they are out there, guys. Like I mentioned, the one I saw earlier, they got under contract at, I believe it's 215 or 220,000, and it's like a 350 ARV. So they're going to be into it for just a little bit of cash out of pocket, but it's a very reasonable transaction. So these are out there. They are available. So let's look at another scenario. Let's say the property gets bid up from 225 to 240, and let's say it costs me more money to renovate the property. So rehab or purchase price 240, 40 to rehab it. Same closing costs because it's my same hard money loan. I still can only borrow 70% of the ARV. So I need $26,000 down because that's my total of purchase, renovation, closing costs. 266 is my loan amount. I've got to invest $26,000 walking out of the title company. 2 months to renovate the property. Call me for the refinance. Finance in the closing costs. 0 cash to do the refi. Investment of 26. 0. 3 months hard money loan payments. 1,000 miscellaneous. $36,000 investment, rents, cash flow, that's all the exact same. Cash on cash return, $9,000 divided into $36,000. That is still a 24% return. So scenario one is almost no money down. Scenario number two is, I would call it low money down, $26,000 or $36,000 out of pocket to acquire a $380,000 appreciating asset. I would describe that as low money down and an exceptionally strong deal. So even if your rehab is more expensive than you thought, and even if you have to bid up the price, this is still a 24% return. Chris, would you repeat? Would you do this again?
Absolutely. Still getting great rental property and great cash on cash return.
That's exactly right. I would do this all day long. Okay. Now let's talk about some financing scenarios. So far, we've used the most expensive financing. Let's go out and get a cheaper hard money loan. Let's say I want to only pay 2 points and 10%, but my hard money lender is only going to lend me 90% loan to cost. But the cool thing, my hard money loan payment's down from $3,300 down to $1,900. So let's check out what happens. $225 price, $30,000 renovation, $6,900 in closing costs, almost half. Loan amount $235,700 because they're only lending me 90% of the ARV. All right, or I'm sorry, 90% loan to cost. Right, that's what's happening is I'm getting capped on my loan to cost. I have to put down at least 10%. So I've got $26,200 invested into the transaction. That's my buy phase. The rehab takes 2 months. Then we come in to do the refinance. We're going to pay off that existing hard money loan, finance in the closing costs. No cash due with the refinance. My total investment is my $26,200 to buy the property, $0 to refinance it. My hard money loan payment's nearly half, only $5,800, plus $1,000 of miscellaneous closing costs cost me $33,000 to acquire this property. My monthly rent, $2,700. Payment, $1,430. Cash flow, $1,270. I get a little more cash flow because I put a little bit more money down, a little bit lower loan amount. Multiply that by 12 minus my expenses, $11,000 annual net cash flow. That's my rent phase. My cash on cash return is $11,000 return on a $33,000 investment. That's a 35% return. So think about this for a moment, guys. This is the exact same property as we looked at in scenario number one. Now, I'm not going to go back to that slide, but scenario number one had a cash on cash return of 75%. Now I have a cash on cash return of 35%. So my cash on cash return is half than scenario number one. Changed in this scenario. Same property, same renovation, same refinance. Only one thing changed. Who I used for my hard money loan and how much of my own cash I had to put into the transaction. So the big benefit here, I saved a ton of money on my hard money costs, but I had to put money into the transaction. Therefore, I am making half as much return. Chris, do you think this is a good deal?
Yeah, I mean, still good. You're getting a rental property and you're still not, I mean, it's not as good as the other ones, but you're still going to get a rental property without a ton of cash out of pocket.
I agree 100%. This is still an extraordinarily good deal. Investors that select a little bit cheaper hard money, I don't have any issue with that. I think they have still made a great choice in buying a property that has a 35% cash on cash return. All right.
If I can tell you, I would do a full hard money down loan because you get better leverage that way.
I would as well, but not everybody is me. Not everybody is you. Some folks like to have a little bit of their own cash into the transaction. Some folks like to pay a little bit less for hard money. Totally get it. Totally makes sense.
Yeah. So Edith says, yeah, wow, leverage is great. Yep. Exactly. So, hey, we got a question here, Joe, that popped up a minute ago. What is a good operating expense ratio? Looks like you're using about 28%.
A good operating expense ratio. So, I would say here we've got taxes and insurance because that's going to be your cost. Vacancy, repairs, and maintenance. These are the hard costs that I'm looking at right here. And I think I wouldn't necessarily be looking at an operating expense ratio. I would be looking at monthly gross cash flow. All right. If I have operating expenses of 50%, but that property is still going to cash flow and give me, $500 a month in return, and that's going to result in a cash-on-cash return of 30% or better, I'm totally fine with that. So I'm not too concerned with operating expenses as long as my rents are outrunning those expense ratios. So I think that's a good question, but I wouldn't be too concerned about it.
Yeah, if you're just looking for some ballparking your own underwriting, Sucrete, a lot of the properties we see, they range from right around 27, 28% to mid 30%. So as a very blanket rule of thumb, I use 33% for back of the napkin math type stuff.
There you go. Any others over there, Chris?
No, we're good.
Great. So let's look at another property. All right, we're going to start out here. Same hard money loan, same property, $1,000 down, buy it. We renovate it, we rehab it. Call me to do the refinance. Whoops, our appraisal comes in low. We thought our ARV was 380. Our actual appraisal is 350. Comes in $30,000 low. That's a 10% error in our initial ARV guesstimate.
And that, let me interject here, Jordan. That goes back to one of the questions we had at the beginning about who determines ARV. And this absolutely happens where when you buy it, the hard money lender, you guys say, hey, we think it's appraised for this much. At the end, 3 months from now, well, things may change, or you may just be off, or maybe the appraiser, when you do the permanent refinancing, disagrees with you. So this is a very real case scenario that can happen.
That's exactly right. This can happen. I've seen it happen the other way too, where, hey, the appraisal comes in $30,000 or $50,000 high, and they say, you know what? Let's wait 2 more months or 3 more months and then do a cash out refinance. So this is a variable. The appraisal is a variable. You need to understand that it can change. So now we can only lend 75% of 350. So we've still got to pay off the loan. We still got to finance in the closing costs. Our new loan amount is $262,500. That gives us total cash into the transaction of $8,500. That's our refi phase. So $1,000 to buy it, $8,500 to refinance it, 3 months of our hard money loan payments, $1,000 in miscellaneous carrying costs gives me a total investment of $20,000. Rents, payments a little bit lower, cash flow is a little bit better. $9,700 annual net cash flow gives us a cash on cash return 47%. Chris, do you know any other investments where I could make a 10% valuation error and still make 47%?
I mean, only my Bitcoin portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, your Bitcoin is killing it, though. I mean, let's be clear.
Yeah, just a little sarcasm, guys. I own 0 Bitcoin. No, but this is a great thing about real estate is this is one of the variables, and even if it's off, you still can get an amazing return.
That's exactly right. Would you do this again?
Absolutely, even with a lower appraised value. I mean,
That's
if I buy a fully renovated, remodeled property for a little less than $400,000 for 20-some grand in the pocket, I would love to do those every day of the week.
Yeah, we're only into this for 6% down, right? 20,000 into 380, 6% down.
Yeah, you typically have to move into the properties if you want that low down payment.
That's right. That's right. All right. So for popular demand, because I know this is an important question, Joe, I've got my own money. I've got my own HELOC. I don't want to pay a hard money lender. No problem. You can do that. Here's how it would work. Purchase price, $225,000. Renovation, $30,000. Closing costs, very minimal. Even when you pay cash, you do have to pay some closing costs because you do have title insurance, the closing fee, initial transfer taxes, whatever it might be. Total loan amount, $0. Down payment needed, $256,500. Let's say that comes from cash or from your HELOC. That is your buy phase. You finish your rehab in 2 months. Then you wait. You wait 4 months because you want to take cash out of this property. Then you call me and you want to refinance. Great. We're going to pay off that existing loan. Your closing costs are going to be $5,500, a little more because it's a cash out loan. Your new loan amount is $262,000. So now you've taken out exactly what you paid for the property, $256,000. That's the refi phase. Your total investment, $256,000 in, you got back $256,000. You had $1,000 of miscellaneous carrying costs. Let's put a guess out there in the chat box. Who thinks or who knows what this $5,130 is? Anybody?
We'll give a couple seconds to see if anyone's brave enough to give a guess. Waiting cost?
Exactly. This is the opportunity cost for not having this $256,000 doing something else. All right. What I mean by that is maybe you have a HELOC of $300,000 and you borrowed $256,000 from it. This is the interest cost, all right, or the opportunity cost of this money not doing something else. And a lot of people say, well, I have that money in cash. Terrific. You have that money in cash. You could have used this money to pay cash for another property. You opted not to. You loaned it to yourself. This is the cost of having that money loaned to yourself. So even if you pay cash, there is a cost for the time period that you wait to get this money back. So $6,130 investment. Rents, cash flow, you're making like $9,600 on a $6,000 investment. This is a 157% return. Would you repeat, Chris? Would you do this again?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Nothing wrong with this. You just need to understand you're tying up your money for a longer period of time. Make sure you don't need that money for something else for 6 months. So I think this is a great transaction. All right, let's talk about the benefits. Number one, you're getting a great rate of return. Very little cash into the deal, and you have the ability to purchase more and more properties with good cash flow with very little investment. However, it's more difficult to qualify for a loan, particularly compared to paying cash. Less equity in the property, more leverage on the investor. Your vacancies have a much higher impact, and you might not have to put any cash into the deal, but you need to have some cash. All right. And on that regards, the appraisal is the key determining factor on the approval of the loan. You need to be prepared to bring some money to the closing. You should expect to put anywhere between 3 and 15% into the transaction. And a lot of people say, well, is it going to be 3% or is it going to be 15%? I don't know. The reason you need to have that money is, what if the appraisal comes in less? What if your renovation costs go over budget? What if you have to fix the sewer? What if you have to fix the roof? There's all sorts of things that come up that you need to have some cash on the sidelines ready to go. So these scenarios, guys, these are best case scenarios. Your real world results might be different. All right. There's a number of factors that can affect these results. And ultimately, you need to be prepared to put cash into the transaction depending on your appraisal, depending on your hard money lender, depending on the approval terms from your permanent lender. If you're at home right now and you have $20 in your pocket and you're thinking, man, this is great, I'm going to use this, I'm going to buy a bunch of properties. No, you're not. You need to have some cash, guys. I would recommend a minimum $15,000 to $50,000 that you're prepared to have on hand in the event that you need it. If you've got $1,000, $50, $100, this is not the scenario for you. So make sure you have some cash to cover any unforeseen items that might come up.
And realize that cash may be something you have to bring in the closing table, and you won't see that cash for a long, long time. Be prepared to invest it and kiss it goodbye for a while and not be liquid.
That's right.
A question came in here, Joe, while you were popping up here. So Sucrete says, just so I'm clear, if I am buying a property with my own cash, there's no way for us to get cash out refinance before that 6-month period.
Not if you're trying to take all of your cash back out. That's correct. Let's go back and look. Right here, you have paid $225 cash for the property. You put in renovation costs. Once you wait 6 months, you can refinance to take all that cash back out of the property. So very good question.
So I don't understand the next question, Sucrete. Could you retype that? During the refinance or cash out refinance, do we see any money sitting in the account to cover operational rental expenses? Or do we need any money? So, Joe, I'll re-ask this again. So if I'm coming to you to do the hard money to permanent financing transition, and you're giving me that long-term financing on there, when you're underwriting me, do I need a certain amount of dollars in the account for operational expenses?
Not for operational expenses. But we do need to see that you have 6 months in savings. So we do look at this monthly payment of $1,100. We need to see that you have 6 months reserves. So in this case would be $6,618 in reserve on this transaction.
You mean the PITI payment, right?
Correct. Yeah, actually, That's right. It would be the principal interest plus your tax and insurance. Excuse me. Good question. Any others out there before we go on?
None so far, but I'll interrupt you if there are.
Great. So what is the number one piece of feedback that I get? I won't even wait because I know you're all thinking it. These deals don't exist anymore. And one of my favorite quotes from a very esteemed real estate professional, whether you think there are deals or you think there are not any deals in this market, either way, you're right. Mr. Travis Spear back in 2014. And in 2014, people were telling us there's no deals in the market. Denver's done. There's nothing else to buy. And that's true, except for all of my clients that have been buying properties and becoming millionaires since 2014. So guys, there certainly are properties out there. The ones that we've financed have been fantastic deals for our clients. They're certainly out there. They're still there. You might have to look just a little bit harder, but they are there. Now, I know we're right up at 2 o'clock. I do have a couple of case studies. Chris, are you okay if I go over just a few minutes?
Yes.
Okay. If anybody has to jump off, totally understand. But we'll just cover a handful of case studies real quick, and then we'll wrap up. So this is a closed transaction back in April of 2016. This was purchase price $150, loan amount $163,800 after all the hard money costs, down payment $17,300. We did the refinance, new loan amount $167,400. They made 2 hard money loan payments. Total investment $20,860. This property generates $953 in cash flow. That's a $9,000 annual return on a $20,000 investment. That's a 43.6% return. Chris, would you do that deal again?
Absolutely.
I would too. Pretty simple property, nothing fancy. In Montbello, 234 ARV, 4-bed, 2-bath, wholesale. These are out there, guys. If you don't know any wholesalers, talk to them. I've seen several of these wholesale deals come across my desk within the last 10 days. They are out there. They are available. Acoma Street is one of my favorites. Purchase price $178,000, $48,000 in renovation. Total down payment $0, 0 cents. They completed the renovation, paid off the existing loan, $6,000 in closing costs, $244,000 in the new loan, $5,949 in hard money loan payments. That's their total investment into the transaction. Rent minus their payment, they're cash flowing $315 a month. Times 12 months, they're making $1,880 after all expenses. This is an $1,880 return on a $5,949 investment. That's a 31% return. Chris, do you think that's a good deal?
I do.
What's wrong with this deal? Do you see anything?
What's wrong with it?
Yeah. And I'll give you a hint. Is $1,880, is that a big number in your world?
Oh, for annual cash flow? No.
Yeah. It's only about $150 a month, right?
Yep, it is.
Why do you think he went through all this work for only $150 a month?
There must be a longer term play there.
My man, you got it exactly right. Look at this lot. All right. Notice how big this lot is. This is on a double lot in Englewood. Chris, would you describe Englewood as a good rental area?
I would describe it as a good rental area and a good transitioning area where there's opportunities for development.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's an okay rental area. If you look at the monthly rent versus the ARV, not as good as some of the other scenarios we looked at. But exactly what Chris said, they bought this property, they have it rented out, and it is a duplex lot. While they're going through all the changes and whatnot they need and permitting process to scrape this and build a duplex, the tenant is paying all of their carrying costs, and they're going to scrape it, put up a duplex, and sell both sides for probably $500,000 to $600,000. And they invested $6,000 to acquire this property. Do you think that's a good deal, Chris?
Yes, I do. Especially if they got the development play. That's a great one.
Yep, absolutely. All right, last one, Fillmore Street. This is one of my favorites. This is on the MLS, guys. $190,000 price in Swansea, 303 ARV. $0 needed to purchase the property. After the renovation was completed, they called me for the refi. We paid off their existing loan. New loan amount, they made 2 hard money payments of $4,300. Total investment into the deal are those $4,300 in carrying costs. Monthly rent $1,900 minus the payment. Cash flow almost $600 a month. times 12 months minus expenses, $5,240 a year on a $4,300 investment. That is a 121% return. Chris, would you do that deal again?
Yes, I would. I mean, I'm trying to. I feel like, are you asking me a trick question again now?
This is not a trick question. My favorite part about this one is on the MLS, guys. Chris, what was the market like in December 2017? Strong sellers market, you think?
That was a very strong seller's market.
Yeah, very strong seller's market on the MLS, guys. Out there on the shelf, anybody could have picked this up. Chris, do you know how long this property was on the market?
They usually go like 3 days or more than 30 days. My guess is more than 30 days.
52 days.
Yeah.
52 days on the MLS. All right. So these deals are out there, guys. If you can't find any, I'd encourage you to look at aged listings. I'd encourage you to talk to your wholesalers. I would encourage you to really understand these numbers because these transactions are there. They are available. So is this strategy right for you? Only you can answer that question, guys. The best option is completely up to you. You should carefully review your personal financial situation, your risk tolerance, your loan qualification ability, your assets, your investment goals, your tax implications, how you're planning to manage the property, and what is your exit strategy. There are a lot of things that go into this. You're going to want to make sure that you've got all of these areas covered and you know exactly what you're doing when you're getting started on this. So any final questions? I'll stick around for a few minutes here. This is everything that we do here at Castle & Cook Mortgage: conventional, FHA loans, VA, purchase, refinance, first-time home buyers, investment properties, the BRRRR strategy, etc. And then our very last slide is our mortgage calculator. You can install that on your smartphone, and then you can plug in purchase price, tax, insurance, and it'll calculate the monthly payment for you and be very helpful as compared to some of the online calculators that may not include taxes, insurance, and mortgage insurance. So, Chris, any final thoughts you'd like to add?
Yeah, I do, just on this, because this is a very popular strategy on the internet, but realize it's a very hard strategy to execute in the current Denver market, which is a seller's market. So I have a lot of investors, and I should say a lot of newer investors, when they come and implement the BRRRR strategy. I say, great, but I tell them, hey, realize this is, you're going to need to network with multiple agents, multiple wholesalers, probably some direct marketing, and be able to move very, very fast. So I usually tell people, I would, do that, but I would not put the sole focus on there, because I've seen lots of people say, oh, I want to do this. And 3 years later, they still get to do one transaction. And so I'm very much like, hey, go for a base hit, go for a base hit, go for a base hit. And when a great transition like this pops up, which is a triple or a home run, then execute on there. But don't just wait around for the perfect property. Get a pretty good property while you're building your experience and your portfolio.
I agree 100%. I receive 3 to 5 phone calls a week from newbies who say they want to do the BRRRR strategy. Fantastic. We take their application, we help them, we get them pre-approved, and about 1 out of 50 actually gets under contract. This really does take experience. It really does take time and energy to implement this. If you have a full-time job that is outside of real estate, you will struggle to fully implement this strategy and truly succeed with it. Doesn't mean you can't, just means you need to understand all the risks going in. If you're new, that's great. This is a great strategy. Doesn't mean we're not going to work with you. We absolutely will, but you're going to need to take our advice. You're going to want to follow the steps because we can see people get burned. And exactly like Chris said, we can see people be afraid to pull the trigger and never actually close on a transaction. And 3 years later, property values have gone up by 15%, and they're still sitting on the sidelines unsure of what to do. So if you want to purchase a property, you want to start building real estate wealth, this is a great way to do it, but you've got to be serious and you've got to get moving forward. Any final questions in the chat box out there, Chris?
Yeah, one last question. Joe, what is the current 75% down non-owner occupied interest rate right now?
Sure. You can select. Many of my investors are selecting between 2.875 and 4.5. Most common is 3.375, but you can pick the interest rate that makes the most sense for you and your personal situation.
Great. Well, I don't see more questions coming in. Guys, I appreciate you coming out. I know we're about 10 minutes past, but we went through a lot of information today. If you have more questions that pop in your mind after this, reach out to Joe, reach out to me. We're happy to help you out.
Absolutely. Chris, thanks so much for putting this together. Appreciate everybody being on the call. Let us know anything we can do to help you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Joe.